Hey everyone, my name is Troy Myers. I'm a graduate of the Stone Coast MFA in Creative Writing. Welcome again to another one of our weekly Sunday night readings series, what we're calling the Stonehouse Reader Series, in homage to the Stonehouse where we met years ago as part of the program. At the Stone Coast MFA is through the University of Southern Maine. I have a very special night for myself tonight in that I'm going to read, but even better, I have two of my closest friends from the program, BRADY KAMPHENKEL reading poetry, and John Christopher Nelson reading fiction. I'll be brief. When I started Stone Coast, I enrolled in an MFA to get a raise at my community college job. I had just started writing poetry again and wanted the extra units. And I think I must have been 48, 47 when I showed up. I was terrified. And I, from the beginning, found such a community in my class in the summer of 2013, I believe it was. Brady always reaching out, touching my shoulder. John always walking with me, checking in with me. And so it's such an honor to read with both of those artists tonight. Both John and Brady are publishing and writing phenomenal work. So I will also say hi to my mom, who watches the next morning, and to Amanda's mom. And give a shout out to Amanda Plow, who is, I guess, the producer of this show. Amanda does all our behind the scenes work. She handles the technical side, which is why this is actually working while I'm talking. So without going any longer, I think I will kick in. Oh, one last thing. We're always looking for new readers. Stone Coast alumni, those about to graduate from Stone Coast faculty, present or past. Please just send me a direct message on Facebook or email me, troy.a.myers, it's M-Y-E-R-S, at protonmail.com. Or you can find me easily from the Facebook page, or Amanda at the Stonehouse Reader Series. We'd love to get more readers lined up. We have a full slate next week. I'll tell you about those readers at the end, but we'd like to get a few more and get May booked out. So I will go ahead and start reading a few poems then, and then I will launch and introduce my friends. I wanted to host tonight, even though I'm reading, just so I could talk to those cats about their writing between the readings. So I'll kick off, and we'll see how it goes. So I have not written a lot since Stone Coast, and one thing that this program or this Sunday Night Reading Series has done for me is motivated me to write. I knew that I needed it. We started this probably to move out of the isolation of the pandemic, which it has done for me on Sunday nights to meet with friends across the country. We also, I also was involved because I wanted to give myself some kind of structure to produce work. I have the worst writer's discipline in the world. So this first poem, Blackberry, came recently, quickly, one of those just beautiful moments when a poem came nearly at once. And every time I sit down, I think I have nothing left in me. I'm over. I have said everything I have to say. So I'm really honored to be able to read this poem tonight and work towards, hopefully a book someday. So this first poem is called Blackberries. Below the staccato fire of the woodpeckers, at the edge of our gardener-kept green, lies a small, occult wilderness. Ragged ground heaped with misshapen juniper, live oak, and low liquid ambers. Thin laurels bend across harried grass and gray, disordered brush. One could cut a hollow in the center of such a slender wood and rest invisible. 6 yards from the glowing sidewalk, where on warm afternoons the mailman wanders in his dream of names, where after humid showers fervent dogs sniff along the aromatic edges of the lawn. I would make myself this place but for the razored blackberry, whose stiff vines snake like lightning through every shaded wall, whose caustic arms curl like raids. Invisible when I push leaves aside until dark nails burn in my side, in my palms. I feel the Christophic ending there too. I don't know why it's there, but it's there and I'm happy to see it. So this next poem I wrote before Stone Coast. I've been tinkering with it a bit. It's called No Meadow. This was to a girl I never knew, just saw from a distance. And years ago, rather like Dante's Beatrice or Petrarch's Laura, I knew we'd never be together. And so I wrote a poem. It's called No Meadow. There can be no meadow red with dahlia, no blanket and blue sundress, no cool Sancerre and salad, your long white limbs flecked by sun through branches. My fingers cannot move on fingers as your eyes, pale as river water, widen with the story of your day. I will not trace your belly's warm descent, nor savor musk of skin, nor distant bake of sage and summer's rainless air. No bright landscape waits for us, no long grassland in the sun. These words grow neither love nor sky. These words grow neither love nor sky. Unrequited love and longing. So many good poems about that. This next poem, I read some poems last time about the beauty in nature, and I'm very focused on, I understand Emerson's vision that a natural object, as I said when I read last time, a rose bush, a jasmine bush, a tree, can present a divine imprint on the mind. I am a fan of Keats' absolute adoration of beauty. John Keats, the English poet. I think Plato in the Symposium understands that beauty is a path to the divine, if we can find the divine. But there's another side to nature, like mosquitoes, another side to human nature. And so that shows up a little bit in Blackberry. I've got a couple more poems now that talk about the other side of the natural world, natural experience. This first one's quite old. It goes before Stone Coast. The second part I finished more recently, but much of this poem goes back. It's called Moon. And this goes back to my ex-wife, my old house. So this goes back about a decade. Our first night in the new house, my wife with friends, room to room, Rich explaining drip feeds to me in the yard. Back inside, sipping stout, he and I hear knocks on glass, and we turn to see his wife waving in the dusk heat of summer outside the high, curved window. Elated, her voice remote, she points toward the eastern ridge. We turn again and see the full moon, gold, swollen, not long risen, lustrous and compelling. As the landscape shows new shadows, Vega and Arcturus dim. Later, my wife and I shift in bed, anxious for the echoes of those who fled this house, each other, who once caressed yet met at last on unlit sand. In the small pink room, a cracked and dangling ceiling fan, rainbow stickers curling off the switch plate, and penciled height marks behind a punctured door. Across the dark floored den, pink semi-gloss streaks half an oaked grain cabinet, and mushroom gray frames ragged blanks where paint was whipped past unmoved furniture. Raw plywood tops a built-in cherry desk, while behind the house, a sun-dried egg glares across the garden shed. Mouths now curl invective that once kissed. As 1,000 miles to the west, blonde fingers draw, and the cold sea lives. I forgot to mention the house we've been to. It had a bad divorce and sort of unfinished and neglected. Who knows why those things happen? This next poem is also newer. It's also about the tension in nature. It's called Death in the Garden. The geometric shrub we hate, a low block of leaves, 2 feet of bare bark trunk, and a matching block above, was saved for my machete when I heard the house finch squeaking. Red-chested, he pitched and hopped on the hedge nearby. I stopped, puzzled, and looked to find a circled nest in the center of the upper bush. For 2 weeks of mornings, we watched his animated life, pricking bugs and worms from off our lawn, his unseen mate chirping, a blur as he returned to the closed and woven branches. Our dog first found the neighbor's cat crouched below the hedge. The cat snarled motor-like and gave no ground. You ran the sprinklers, and it fled. But 3 days after, there was no music, and I found the male, dirty, stiff, and on his side, on our front yard's wildest edge. We cannot see into the nest, but the mother does not come and go. His was the death of any father. The cat a pent, familiar hunger. This is a poem that I wrote at Stone Coast about a trip in Ireland. We take it Stone Coast. If you're a student at Ireland or a student at Stone Coast or want to be one, you can go to Ireland, which is an awesome part of the program. It's also a poem about spiritual searching, and it's called Daughter Rise. As our student group wanders a high Irish cliffhead, I noticed inked letters on a lovely classmate's calf. What does that say? I ask. She looks down, pauses. It says, Daughter Rise in Aramaic. And I, who know the Gospels well, but am post-drunk, jet-lagged beyond coherence, respond, Are you Jewish? As she walks away, I recall the words, speak them softly, Talitha kum, Jesus raising Jairus' daughter. Tonight, far from home and a wife I no longer know, I type a prayer. When every network in my body darkens, when every glint sinks cold, may I feel fingers on my face and hear a voice. I have come far to find you. Wake to eyes of fire, the warmth of endless bread. Brady was with me that day, I was going to read in a minute, and he was singing a hymn, something about eyes of fire, or at least that's what I heard. And that in part inspired that poem. I realize I've never shared that with a classmate. I need to, but I think she'd be okay with it. This next poem is a trip I took with my lovely fiancée, Julie, who features in the next couple of poems, who I'm going to round out with. We took a trip to Ireland and Scotland, and oh my gosh, did I love Scotland. I'd already been to Ireland, and of course we loved Ireland as well. We stayed in a little place called Salt Hill, just north of Galway, for part of our trip. And there's a famous memorial there on the beach. You walk out into a path, and then there's a story about a girl etched into the stone, or on a plaque on the stone, I forget. But such a terrible time in Irish history. And so I wrote this poem and try to help myself process that experience. It's called The Famine Memorial, Salt Hill, Ireland. The tide is far and still falling. Sand and thin water shine beyond the moss-dark rocks of the quay. Curious, we walk the outward path to read the tall, coarse stones. And we learn of the child Celia, who stumbled on pale feet into Galway, her wasted body doomed. Her parents in bed on their infested farm, gaunt and slack-faced dead. Abrupt as a streaking star, a blue glass flower breaks inside me, and I am hurtled blind to the world's ruptured floor until my fingers find your forearm, your sweater the clearest blue of the sky that is perfect always. Later, when we come to the Corib, swans bright as white paper feed without sound at the edge of the bay. Ah, how great Julie's been for me. This poem was also for her. It's called Myrtle. As you rise, your waist turns like the curving myrtle, fluid and shaped with life. From where have you come? Through black curtains that closed on me like rain, past bled and untended earth, to the blue and lifting fountain, to the wind-hushed garden of this hour. Love is in the world too, isn't it? Not just cats and blackberries. I didn't really print out many poems. I only have one more very short one, and I haven't read that long, but that's fine. This comes from Stone Coast also. If you have seen Matisse's cutout, Icar, I guess it's pronounced. It is Icarus. The black body, the red heart, the stars, the blue background. I had a class, Elaine Rivera, I think, at Stone Coast. We did an ekphrastic unit where we wrote about art. And so this is Icar after Matisse's cutout. My face and arms rise through a pond of stars. Cool air, dusk blue, rapture. A red dot heart in the shadow of my body. Thank you, everyone. This has been so good for me. And I'm so grateful this is making me write poetry. Because without this, I would be fading away into, I don't know what, political work. God help me, which I'm trying to cut back on. Again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I will now introduce my good friend Brady. As I said before, Brady and I drew very close. Brady, I think you're next. John's working on his audio a little bit. But Brady has a phenomenal heart, wonderful man. And I want to bring him on and say hi to him for a little bit, and then we'll let him read. Brady, come on up. Are you out there? Hello?
Hello.
Hey, it's good to see you, man.
Hi, Troy. Good to see you, buddy. What a reading.
Thank you. I see some notes that some of the odd video cut out. I really don't know, but I had a good time, so I hope it worked. Thanks, brother.
It was perfectly clear on my end, and that is, man, it's just such a, that you are writing is such a blessing for the poetry.
Oh, thank you so much, man. So what do you bring us tonight? What are you working on?
Well, I've got all kinds of things,
Good.
all kinds of stuff ready for you guys, including stuff I just wrote today.
Fantastic. Fantastic. You can write what you read. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'll be making revisions in the middle of the reading. You know, this is mostly
I think
just
you could take requests like thumbs up for this word.
Yeah, exactly.
Thumbs up for the other word. I think that's a great idea. Brady, where are you living now? You're in Michigan. No. Vikings. Minnesota.
Vikings, that's right.
Yeah. I'm sorry. And you're teaching at St. Scholastica College.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Good for you. All right. Well, go ahead. It's all your time, man. Read what you have. We'd like to hear it all.
Thank you, Troy.
Very welcome.
Oh man, it's so, what you're doing with this series is so amazing. I warned everyone that I was going to read some stuff I wrote today, and that's just, that sounds funny, and it is, and it's ridiculous, and I'm sorry to inflict new poetry on you all, But also, like Troy was pointing out, this social dimension of having your back against the wall vis-a-vis. I haven't written anything in a few days,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden there's this great injection of creative panic. It's like,
Very good.
So thank you,
Very
Troy. It's all because of you, man.
Oh, well, it's not just me. It's me and Amanda and K-Bell thought of this too. So, but hey, thanks for being here, Brady. It's a highlight of my week. Time's all yours, man. Let's hear what you got.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a poem here. It's called In a Distant West, and it's just about, it's kind of got the coronavirus blues, but also just the sort of the downside of this incredible, beautiful relationship that you forge with your classmates in the Stone Coast.
Cool. Very cool.
Where my friends are in the West. So this is called In a Distant West, with a little subtitle for my friends.
Cool.
One.
It's all you.
Thank you, Troy. 1. In a distant West, untouchable to my sense, a sun nothing like my own is setting a little less than mine. In that fuller light, friends I've had will themselves to exist, in spite of my own domestic darknesses. They pass over my words like the sun pretends to. They are untouchable to my sense, a tree falling in the woods. From here, the branches breaking one by one and all at once against the earth make no sound to me. They sound like fingers breaking. They sound like the crunch of snow underfoot, I say to myself, to fill the silence of them. They are untouchable to my sense. My fingers are numb in long winter, fragile, wide night. Street lamps douse themselves above me sometimes. Was it their plan to die only when I find them? Or was it a reaction, a sharp darkening effect, the reply to my unfeeling hands, groping for what I thought I knew in my own shallow pockets?
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that was In a Distant West for my friends. I'm going to keep on going with new work, very new work. This was also from just before that last poem got written. So, I mean, that's fair warning that it's relatively new. And I haven't had my good friend Troy take a look at them yet. I just want to say again what an honor it is to read alongside Troy and John. These two men have been influential is not an accurate term for what they've done for me. Everything, their friendship in my time at the Stone Coast was my time at the Stone Coast, frankly. So anyway. This is a piece called Prophecy. It's just about, it's this interesting idea of how maybe life is boring sometime. I don't want to invoke John Berryman's Life Friends as boring, but I do want to invoke that precise poem. So anyway, it's called Prophecy. By the time the sound of these words reaches where you understand them, they will have decayed because they are from the past. It is easy to see the future. Change the smiles into lips slightly parted, the reason for smiling decayed in its shroud of history. The lips are slightly parted where they will be, and the breath make perfect as the place all winds come from is perfect. The eyes replace with sockets for them sink down into the base of the skull, the back of the mind. A message you keep forgetting to reply to. What else is there to say? You know what I will tell you, and I what you'll say back. The surprises themselves are something baked in. We plotted them out together in the shade of a tree whose shadow is how we forget it. The tree shape decayed by the angle of light, the time of the day. I like what you say. What I don't like, I'll be sure to revise. I, the cold and distant author, cold towards how he used to write, suspicious of your kindnesses, carefully marking the spot, stopping where he is, hiding his present work, knowing and forgetting that he will have to return. And when he does, where will you be? Okay. I love to read Robert Creeley. I love to break all kinds of poetry rules because there are no poetry police. I have yet to be arrested by the poetry police coming knocking on my door. Any day now, perhaps they will show up and bust it down, and they'll have to tear gas me out of here. I warn you. But as of right now, I'm at large. And so I like to write some poems that I'll admit maybe are difficult or a little bit resistant to first hearings. And then I like to torture people who can't even look at the poem by reading a difficult work at them. And I hope you'll forgive me for that. Mea culpa. This is called What Happened. And I'm really excited about it. It's pretty new. What happened? You cannot imagine it. I could tell you each particular that made it up, so far as words can take them, but you had to be there. What I would show you isn't what I saw, but some new thing made out of misremembering and of words I chose for sound and for shape because I love them. That is all I have to show you in 1,000 misdirections in what I say I felt I saw. Man. Thank you, K. Bell, Troy, and Amanda for masterminding this whole thing. It is so good just to read. You know, John Berryman said we have got to have an audience. It's not a question of if you can have one, that's great. You have to have one. And you wither away without one like a plant with no roots. So thank you. This is a translation of Rilke, Rainer Rilke. I love to disrespect the masters of the past by going in with no knowledge of their language and creating awful translations, purposely bad translations of what they had to tell us. I like to just misunderstand them. I could give you a Walter Benjaminian explanation of my cold-blooded murder of pure language, and we know that there's the great debate in translation. Do you even attempt to get the sound of the original language? We all know it's pretty much a doomed enterprise. So I like to embrace the doom and just do awful translations of their work. So this is the famous Rilke poem, Archaic Torso of Apollo, with the amazing finale, You Must Change Your Life, one of the greatest endings in poetry history. One of the least deserving of my murderous translation rampage. But here you go anyway. So this is my take, Archaic Torso of Apollo. We did not know the face we'd heard of. His eyes, ripening, sound like harvests of thirst. His lamp still glows. It shines out its abdomen, on which to look may look like life given back. Ourselves, the very musculature of our own gaze. The shine still holds. If we cannot see it, it undoes us. Our chests grow empty of dazzling white clothing. Quiet on me falls the mention of my own breast. No loins could ever hold my laughter. My silent beacon turning toward my conjugal bearing, my task at hand endears me to myself. I am my light that falls. Or else close me away into my own ears, a buried shadow, unearthed and clothed in stone, my shifting shale transparent through autumn leaves. I am what old flames are, left to flickering out in ram's skins, stretched and sweetened, a sacrifice. Nothing comes from the edges the coast brings out in the sky, strengthening its void. The prefigured light of its starlessness is infinitely not for you, whose stillness beneath them bends life into change. Yeah, that has so close to absolutely nothing to do with what Rilke said, but it's really exciting for me. Here's a poem called Where We Come From, and this is a shout out to Barbara Ford, wherever she is right now, probably with her newborn child. She took on this great project as a student of the Stone Coasts for her graduating project, and it had to do with the stone house, which we lost. We were I think the very last class that had access to the mansion, the stone mansion in the forest, the Wolf Neck Woods. I have a little glass that I'm drinking scotch out of. That is a relic of that place. But yeah, she published several of her classmates in a theme-based anthology about home. And after many revisions, this is that same poem that was published in that. So it's called Where We Come From. Stearns County, the great living wall of your cornfields sways like lake waves in the autumn air. The semi-trucks thunder through your core, passing away. West of here, the Ruth family divides my grandfather's weaponry. I wanted my mother's father's bow. I got my mother's father's gun, his rifle, with its long, narrow barrel passing away. This morning, I took the gun from my pickup's bed, damp with dew, and leaned it against my bookcase, the chamber empty and still beside my Herodotus, the barrel staring up through the cloudy ceiling into the sky, aching, it seemed, to look away. I moved from you, old county, lost town. Your cornfields fold over slowly, take my pictures down from your wall. I helped to take those shots. I tore in my truck through the brief interval you were, like the semis drew the bars and churches short, whose steeples I see above the other shortness from the highway. With my granddad's single barrel in my bed, out of sight behind the mess of my interior, the small cab in back of my mind, its burial under clothes I'll wear when I get there, rough drafts I'll search for endings for, ancient histories pages cannot contain. Yeah, so that's from the Stone House, a literary anthology. Here's a new poem called When I Forget Your Name. This poem centers on my own habit of forgetting people's names, even people really close to me, and the fact that that's a kind of familial inheritance, unfortunately. My dad did the exact same thing, and this poem will be talking about that a little bit. So, when I forget your name. I have not mislaid or lost it, or its sounds. I have them still. They need me to discover them, though, as the mind buries yours with others. I knew them before you. I'm supposed to say it's for the best. They led me to you. They were not a path, though. Before I get to your name, I stumble on theirs, an unwieldy prefix of things committed to memory. And I arrive at last at yours, the last one, like a surname. I don't like this. It reminds me of the tiny accumulating annoyances every time my father did the same with what I myself am called. He always had to name every sibling before he named me. The birth order, renewed every time he spoke to me, an eternally recurring reconvocation. Sometimes even the family pet, Penny, a corgi, was sounded out before Dad got to me. The ritual seemed to shrink me, to add the arbitrary air of oblivion to who I am. And I think, too, when I forget your name, of my father's mother, tucked away in shady pines, staring at a dusty photograph of her late husband, asking herself, and when that failed her son, where her Donnie is. He is dead, my father reminds her. He died back in June. Rifles were fired at his funeral, saluting him. Everyone was there. You said it did him honor. I promise you loved it. And your grandson is here visiting. Jay, Bree, Penn, Brady. Brady says hello, says to say he loves you. Okay, and I cede my time. I think I've done my 15 minutes, so I'd better be good. Thank you all so much.
Yes, Brady, thank you for reading. I never critique, of course, on this show, but Julia Child said, what did she say? You never apologize when you serve a meal. Your Rilke, I don't care if it had anything to do with Rilke. That was a brilliant poem. Gorgeous poem. And if you're deconstructing Rilke's whatever, you do it. That was fantastic work, man.
Thanks, Troy.
You do not need to apologize for anything like that. I love that line, as the place all winds come from is perfect, or come through is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me of that line I had about, where the blue sky is perfect always. Anyway, love it, man. It's the platonic forms pulling at us. Fantastic, Brady. Beautiful stuff. I've been getting comments that the stream cut out right after I started reading, so I don't know if we're back. There's a few people still here. If we need to, we'll do this again, but I think we're live again, so that's good. And if we miss anything, we'll just repeat those poems and we'll do it again. It's so much fun. So Brady, thank you a ton for reading, and thank you for all those who are still hanging out. You've got a fantastic voice, man. We want to hear you come back and read some more stuff. Now, John, I hope you're out there. John Christopher Nelson is a writer of fiction. He was, as I said in my class, a part of that very close group of three. He and Brady and I were such good friends. I remember coming from the bus. We stayed at Bowdoin College, which is, I'm a community college, I went to Cal State, it's a pretty modest state school from a B and my MA. I have what I call blue collar academic credentials, which is not exactly accurate, but to stay at Bowdoin, that famed liberal arts college, in the summer, in the dorms with all these brilliant people, walking across the quad to the dorms. And I remember John would always had a bandana in his back pocket, like a red bandana. Always a sharply dressed guy. And I remember him saying very seriously something like, you'll never know when a young lady might need, a handkerchief, or however he put it. I can't put it right. But what a sweet man. Such great hearts for both of these cats. So Brady, it was wonderful to hear from you. John, if you are out there, let's bring you on. How are you, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I like the haircut. I get it. It's COVID easy.
Bandana right here.
You got the bandana. You left one in my car last time I was in Maine, I think. Did I ever get that back to you?
No, but if you happen to encounter someone crying, you can let them use it.
Yeah, I have it, man. I appreciate you passing that on sincerely. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
Excited to be here again. I mean, thanks again to you and Amanda and everyone else for putting this together. Thanks. Like Brady said, I mean, and you as well. It's really cool to get to read with the two of you. And Brady had mentioned that the friendships were kind of our time at Stone Coast, and I agree completely. I mean, when people ask about whether or not to do a MFA program, when I'm talking about the pros and cons, one of the things that I always mention is that some of the lasting friendships that I found from that residency, or from that program rather, were one of the best things that I took from it.
Yeah.
I feel like, these are friendships that I'll have my whole life, which is wonderful. Awesome poems too from both you and Brady. Thank you guys for reading.
Cool. So what do you have for us tonight? And you've been publishing quite a bit. I know I've seen a couple of your other readings online. And
Yeah, here and there. I'm actually currently working on my first kind of novel length piece.
cool.
So I'm going to read an excerpt from that. It's a modern Western. It's set in a fictional town in central Nevada in 1980. I could give more context for the excerpt, but as you know, a lot of times you end up trying to over-explain, and it just makes it more confusing. So I'm just going to read the excerpt that I have, and then,
Awesome. And this is straight fiction. It's not speculative. It's not.
Yeah, just
okay.
Straight up fiction. Yep. Just
Very cool.
The genre I'd put it in most is just a modern Western.
All right. I love that, man. And Cormac McCarthy. And
oh, yeah.
How can you surpass that? So you will. So let's hear what you got, John.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Taking note of winter's slow approach felt like hunting. Anselm let his eyes stretch over the property, flat land adorned by rocks and weeds. The horizon didn't really exist, as the desert had neither end nor beginning. The suggestion of snow feigned indistinct like an unspoken promise already broken in its intent, and the wind's fickle course kept the few existing flakes suspended. Late October made the open, level ground appear the same at 5 in the afternoon as it had at 5 in the morning. He could hear the wind picking up, whistling under the crawl space and between the floorboards inside. In the shy of the 2 weeks he'd lived out here, he was already learning to sleep through this and the abrupt rifle crack of wood snapping its bones in the fireplace. 61 miles from town, about an hour exactly in his truck, Anselm was eager to welcome anything that wasn't dead air or unidentifiable interruptions of the void around the cabin. Standing at the base of the 3 steps to the front landing, he watched for something out there in all that nothing of the 138 acres. Each gloved hand was tucked in the opposite armpit, while the air chapped his earlobes with every glance. Anselm squinted, and the wet at the corners of his eyes stiffened in the cold. He watched the sunlight retract across the desert floor, an abrupt border chasing itself like a drawn curtain, before he turned and willed his stiff knees and sore back up the 3 steps. Barry, his dog, casting curious eyes from under his brow, watching his master struggle to remove his boots. That accomplished, Anselm moved to the rocking chair in the corner of the living room and settled into it like poured batter. The night whispered around the wood beneath him, chilling Anselm even through the wool of his socks and the long underwear inside his clothes. Battalions of embers dive-bombed from the mouth of the fireplace, where the cold air of the room rendered their assault invisible. Saving this, it was silent and still. As had been the case for the past several nights, Anselm fell asleep still rocking, having only removed his boots. The cabin was finally fully supplied, at least as best as he could estimate. But in the last moments before sleep dragged him from consciousness to somewhere darker, Anselm decided he should purchase a book, and probably put together a more significant stockpile of liquor, something to help him unwind in the evening, to force his thoughts to match the vacuum of the world outside. When dawn rustled around, Anselm was already half awake to observe its approach through the windows. The dawn did not notice the cabin or Anselm inside of it. The emerging day felt nothing for him. While Anselm was easing himself into the rocking chair out at Myrtle Ranch, Carn Moody held the front door of Pete's Tavern for his younger brother Coyote to enter the bar. Carn stepped in behind his sibling, the two appearing nearly identical in appearance and disposition. Along with the cold that intruded through the open door, the brothers carried the weight of dread on their soot-covered persons. Their jackets and boots glistened from the hydrant water that had been dripping and streaming from the remains of bitterroot, providing the impression that the men were freshly back from sea. But, with the exception of a flake or two of snow sneaking around, it was bone dry outside. Beneath the brims of their hats and between the flaps over their ears, their eyes projected like searchlights from ash-blackened faces. The scatter of drinkers inhaled their conversations as though all had simultaneously been caught speaking ill of the Moody brothers. Elvis, for his part, kept right on crooning "There's a honky-tonk angel" from the jukebox. Avery Bailey thought, as the men stepped in from the cold, that they looked like the Russians might have after burning Moscow to spite Napoleon. She didn't share this observation with her companions, Randall and Liza Pratt. It was better for Avery and her sister if no one in Treffene knew that she'd read Tolstoy or that she'd paid that much attention to the Moody's entrance into Pete's. Ricky was behind the bar, frozen in the motion of reaching for a pint glass while the reality of the Moody's presence washed over him. To his knowledge, Bitterroot, the bar the brothers had owned, was the only one in Treffene the Moody's had ever set foot in until now. The lull was brief before pockets of patrons pulled their eyes back to whomever they'd been speaking with, and the reignition of the collective dialogue spooked Ricky from his standstill. He brought the glass under a tap and pulled the handle, offering a not-so-casual wave to the brothers with his free hand. "Hiya." Coyote was looking off to his side at the wall that framed the door they'd just stepped through. Carn acknowledged Ricky's greeting. "Hi yourself." The brothers moved to the bar as one, slipping into two open seats directly in front of Ricky. 2 whiskeys. Care which? 2 whiskeys. Ricky reached for a bottle of well, everyone in the bar attempting to observe and overhear the exchange without the Moody's noticing their busy eyes or eager ears. Coyote was looking over his shoulder, away from the bar, toward the same corner of the room that had grabbed his attention upon their entrance. Ricky set the whiskeys in front of the brothers, and the sound of glass on the counter pulled Coyote's head around, where his eyes fell on the drinks. A filthy, thick-fingered hand slipped from his coat sleeve like a turtle's head, wrapping around his whiskey. He bent his neck and gestured at the wall behind him. "Merle Haggard really autographed that poster there?" Ricky didn't know and was thrown by the question. Carn swallowed his whiskey and pointed for Ricky to refill it. His hands were worse than Coyote's. "Never mind the poster." He swallowed his second whiskey and set the glass down again, letting his eyes suggest a third refill. "You know what this is?" Carn lifted his hands in front of his face, offering Ricky a better look at their filth. The men smelled like they'd crawled directly out of hell, and Ricky imagined smoke pouring off the hands that Carn kept raised until the Elvis song ended, and the bar fell back under a hush. 4 patrons waited for a punch that was never thrown, and were disappointed when Carn set his hands back on the bar, letting one protectively embrace his drink. The next record in the queue started up, and Charlie Rich crowded the silence away with "She Called Me Baby." "You two, seeing what you could salvage from the bar, then?" Before Carn could answer, Ricky added, "I sure am sorry, Carn. That's really..." "Keep it, Rick. You know we's lucky that crowd managed to put out the fire at all." The 2 volunteer firefighters within earshot did not acknowledge the remark. "But we managed to dig through all of it, and we found these." Carn nodded at Coyote, who lifted an arm from his side of the bar, revealing a worn-out canvas sack the color of corn. He rested the sack on the countertop and removed 4 partial bottles, blackened and distorted to half their original size, like melted candles. They retained the look of bottles only at their base, which allowed them to stand upright. Coyote set them carefully side by side, as though setting a table for the sort of holiday party he'd never had occasion to attend. Karn explained, "The part that don't make sense to me, if they'd just stuffed rags soaked with whatever and tossed them, mazel tovs or whatever, they'd have broken. But whatever these are, I don't sell them. These weren't in my bar when I locked up night before." Which tells me my bar didn't burn by accident. Now, bringing his third whiskey to his lips, but not drinking yet. "I heard you were out front of my place when it was burning earlier, talking to that fuckhead." Karn tilted the glass up and swallowed. Ricky thought better that he wouldn't pretend not to know what Karn meant. Coyote was back to sipping away in his own thoughts, as though he hadn't just been involved in the display of evidence. The graying whiskers of his mustache covered his mouth entirely, which left his neighbors in Treffine ever unable to read his face. Ricky looked around, as if searching for someone to answer for him, before starting, I mean, Hank tells me that you asked the new guy for a lift to the fire station. Think he'd have gone down there on his own if you hadn't suggested it, or just stood there watching it burn and toasting his fucking marshmallows?" Ricky decided also then that it was wise to withhold that the idea to go to the fire station had been Anselm's. "Karn, I don't know. I just thought since he had his truck there anyway, idling." Karn motioned Ricky silent with a wave. "Idle, idle." He nodded, grimacing at his empty glass. "Nothing to show for all our work regardless, but don't think I don't take notice of the effort." Had Ricky been a braver, or perhaps a stupid man, he'd have shared his thought to correct Karn, reminding him all the work had been by the hands of their father. By now, the whole bar smelled of charred wood. Coyote had finally finished his whiskey, and Ricky refilled it without being asked. He thought he heard an acknowledgement from under Coyote's whiskers. Karn removed his hat, revealing a white forehead that stood out from the black smeared over the rest of his face. His yellow and gray hair was matted in spots, a static spray in others. He leaned across the bar closer to Ricky, his irises a light enough blue that they got lost in the whites. "You think that's something the new guy's got sand for?" Ricky thought, before anything else could cross his mind, of Anselm's first meeting with the Moody's, and his run-in with Coyote the next morning. Sure, Anselm had a motive, but so did a lot of people. The Moody's were feared, but they weren't liked or respected. The difference was that everyone else knew better than to cross them. But Anselm also did not seem the vindictive type, nor did Ricky think him capable of successfully pulling off anything like that. "Gosh, Karn, I don't know. I mean," Karn had leaned even closer across the bar and interrupted Ricky's non-answer, rolling his eyes and settling back in his seat. "Gee gosh." He gave the bar 2 solid pats with his palms. "Yeah, boy. Gosh." He regarded Coyote, who was sniffing at his second pour, too used to and thus also deaf to Karn's flair for the dramatic. "Let's head out, Coyote. Rick," bringing his eyes back to the bar, "you mind opening a tab for us to settle up next time?" It wasn't a question, and Ricky knew it would remain open indefinitely. He wasn't worried about his job, though. Pete would understand. He would have to. He'd cuss, but it'd be cussing the Moody's once they were out of earshot. "I think we'll be back here more often." "Sure, Karn, yeah." Coyote tossed back his second shot and set the glass carefully on the counter, throwing a wink at Ricky. Another silence swept the bar as the brothers' exit flooded it with cold. There wasn't a breeze outside, but the air rushed in like the ocean into a submarine each time the door was open. Then it settled closed, and, with the Moody's, the cold was gone. Outside, Coyote slipped a cigarette into his mouth and offered one to his brother, who pulled it from the pack before lighting Coyote's and then his own. Coyote returned the pack to the breast pocket of the flannel beneath his coat and jerked his head at the door they just stepped through, taking a long pull on his smoke. "That weird redheaded gal's in there." Karn watched the snowflakes fall. He could feel the damp on their jackets, all the moisture that had clung to them while they searched the soaked wreckage of their bar, wanting to harden in the cold. "Which one?" "Short hair." Coyote had already finished nearly half his cigarette in a single pull and had the pack back in his hand again, smearing it with soot. She was holding court with the Pratts. Gave us hard eyes when we walked in and then pretended not seeing us. Huh. Karn's mouth hung on the tail end of the noise. He searched for the rest of his thoughts in the clouds above. Wonder what she was doing with Randall and Liza. I was seeing Randy tomorrow about that shovel. I could ask him. Nah, don't. I don't want them girls to know we're keen on them. They're up to some weird shit just like the new guy. Karn blew a mouthful of smoke at the night. Coyote, who only disagreed with Karn when he was certain of his counterpoint, a habit that resulted in Karn never disputing such responses, shook his head seemingly in disappointment at the idea of Anselm as a person. He's just a soft panhandle turd. Wouldn't know weird shit if it flung out from between his butt cheeks. Redheads, though, you're right. Yeah. Still, we need to get out that way and pay him a visit one of these nights. Bothers me more his being out there on Pop's land than us not supposing to be. Vernal Road was dead. Anyone not already asleep was inside the bar, and the muffled sounds of music and conversation on the other side of the door were the only things alive in the night. The street lights on their wet black jackets made the brothers look like they'd just struck oil. On the ground, the snow was cautiously accumulating. Without saying anything else, the brothers turned towards Karn's truck. In the bed were several cases of salvaged liquor, along with a handful of velvet paintings of Elvis, some extra pool cues, and 2 spools of barbed wire, all saved from the Bitterroot basement. They hadn't worried about leaving all of this out in the open. Everyone knew what Karn's ever-unlocked truck looked like. And that's it.
John, I've read some good stuff by you. I think that might be your finest or my favorite that I've heard so far.
Thank you.
Beautiful work. And then apparently the feed came back up when you were on there. So we lost ourselves for a while, but you got seen and heard. Some of these lines, Russians after burning Moscow. That was fantastic, man.
Thank
Soft pan-handled turd. Wouldn't know weird shit if it flew out his butt cheeks. Brilliant, bro. How far have you got on this thing?
I got about 37 pages. The thing was, it was originally going to be a short story, and then it kind of did that thing where it started writing itself and got too long to be a short story. And then even after that, I was like, okay, there's still way more story to tell here. So I'm kind of just building off of that.
Good. We will bring you back to hear more of it because that was some fantastic writing, brother.
Thanks again. And thank you again for having me.
Of course, John. It was such a pleasure to be with you and Brady. I'm sorry it was the one night we had technical collapse, but we'll see. If it's all intact, we'll just post a link. If not, we'll just do it again. Let's bring Brady up to say hi. Hey, man, you put a hat on. How are you?
I'm good. It's cold in Minnesota still.
I bet it is. How cold?
Well, there's snow on the ground, so.
Okay, that's pretty chilly. Very good. So Brady and John.
Oh, that was so great, man.
What's that?
John has to finish that novel so I can read it. That's so.
I agree. That's fine stuff.
Oh, I feel like I'm covered in a layer of dust. Just gritty Western dust. Coen Brothers esque, man.
Oh, that's high praise. Thank you.
That is high praise, man. Well, we are at 6 o'clock. What needs to happen? The three of us need to get together again. I saw you in January not January before COVID in Maine, which was wonderful. But we need to go back and get together again somehow. We'll go to Brady's house. He's in the middle. Well, no, he's not in the middle. But anyway, I miss you both, and I'm glad you're both well.
Likewise.
And I heard some fine work from both you cats tonight. So keep it up, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Amanda, for working very hard in the back end when everything apparently fell apart. We'll figure out what happened later. I guess StreamYard would no longer go to Facebook, and who knows? It's all that weird stuff. So we'll try to avoid it in the future. But thank you for having such fine readers tonight, for showing up and reading with me. Such good, close friendships, great hearts in both of you. So take care, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.